For centuries, a secret plague stalked the corridors of power, toppling kings and rotting dynasties from within, all while hidden behind the gilded mask of royalty. Syphilis was the great equalizer of the crowned and the common, a disease of slow, creeping horror that showed no deference to bloodline or title. It infiltrated the most exclusive bedrooms, festered in the shadows of political unions, and left a trail of madness, disfigurement, and broken succession in its wake. Tonight, we count down 5 monarchs and heirs whose reigns were defined not by glory, but by this private, painful scourge, and the devastating legacies they left behind. At number 5, we find a king who inherited a throne by tragic accident, Luís I of Portugal. Born in 1838 as the spare, not the heir, Luís was a scholarly prince with a passion for literature and languages, content with a life of intellectual and romantic pursuits. Then, in 1861, a brutal typhoid epidemic swept through the House of Braganza, claiming his elder brother, King Pedro V, and 2 younger siblings in swift succession. Luís, the reluctant academic, was thrust onto the throne. His marriage to the young Italian princess, Maria Pia of Savoy, began with hope. She bore him 2 sons, securing the dynasty. But Luís could not forsake his libertine ways, maintaining a public affair with a celebrated actress. The heartbroken queen withdrew, and the king's private life became a tangled web. It was within this chaos that the infection took hold. What happens when a man who never wanted ultimate power is handed a crown and a death sentence? For years, the syphilis lay dormant. But by 1887, it awakened with a vengeance, attacking his central nervous system. The charming polyglot king descended into a living nightmare of neurosyphilis. He was consumed by crippling depression, violent mood swings, and debilitating seizures. The man who once translated Shakespeare was lost to a fog of neurological decay. He died in 1889 at just 50, a monarch remembered more for his silent suffering than his statecraft. Our 4th entry takes us to the opulent, perilous court of 17th century Persia. Shah Abbas II ascended the Safavid throne as a child and grew into a ruler of notable early promise, securing his borders and fostering a brief golden age. But Abbas was also a man of legendary appetites, presiding over a vast harem and decadent parties that became the empire's open secret. This world of unchecked pleasure was his undoing. Historians trace his rapid physical decline in his 30s to advanced syphilis, likely contracted within his own court. The vibrant, decisive Shah became a reclusive invalid, his body and mind collapsing under the disease's assault. He died in 1666, around age 34, leaving his empire weakened and adrift. His death marked not just the end of a life, but the beginning of the Safavid dynasty's irreversible decline. The poison in the king's blood became a metaphor for the poison in the state. The throne of kings is no shield against the body's betrayal. At number 3, we encounter a tragedy of immense political consequence. Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria. The only son of Emperor Franz Joseph, Rudolf was born in 1858 to inherit the vast Habsburg Empire. But his spirit was broken early by a cold, rigid upbringing and an abusive tutor. He emerged a deeply unstable man, prone to depression, heavy drinking, and reckless sexual escapades. His political marriage to Princess Stephanie of Belgium was doomed from the start. Rudolf's carelessness had a catastrophic cost. He contracted syphilis and gonorrhea, and passed at least one of these infections to his young wife. The result was a hidden personal devastation. Stephanie's reproductive system was severely damaged, rendering her unable to bear more children, a death blow to her standing and to the direct Habsburg line. How many wars have been fought over a succession that was lost not on a battlefield, but in a bedroom? Betrayed and trapped, the couple lived separate, bitter lives. Rudolf, sinking deeper into despair and likely neurosyphilitic madness, orchestrated a murder-suicide pact with his teenage mistress at his hunting lodge in Mayerling in 1889. The scandal shook Europe and extinguished the primary line of Habsburg succession. The empire's future died with the prince in that lonely room, a direct result of the disease and despair that had consumed him. The runner-up spot belongs to the most infamous libertine of the English Restoration, John Wilmot, the 2nd Earl of Rochester. A poet of savage genius and a courtier in the scandalous court of Charles II, Rochester made debauchery his life's work and his art's subject. He fought duels, abducted an heiress, whom he later married, led the infamous Merry Gang, and even disguised himself as a quack doctor, and sometimes a female midwife, to seduce unsuspecting women. His body was his playground, until it became his prison. Syphilis, the occupational hazard of his lifestyle, ravaged him with a grotesque specificity. His legendary wit was eventually overshadowed by his physical decay. His nose collapsed, his eyesight failed, and he lost control of his bodily functions. The man who wrote some of the era's most brilliant, scathing verse died in 1680 at age 33, blind, incontinent, and utterly consumed by the very passions he celebrated. He died as he lived, a spectacle of excess. And now, the monarch whose personal carelessness triggered a continental crisis. Joseph I, Holy Roman Emperor. Crowned in 1705, Joseph was a vigorous, pleasure-loving ruler who saw the Habsburg court as his personal seraglio. He flaunted a powerful official mistress, scandalizing Europe, while still returning to the bed of his pious wife, Wilhelmine Amalia. His reckless infidelity had a dynastic price. He contracted syphilis, reportedly from a gardener's daughter, and transmitted the infection to the empress. The consequences were catastrophic on a geopolitical scale. The disease rendered Wilhelmine infertile, destroying any hope for a male heir from the senior line. This triggered a frantic and often bizarre scramble for succession that would destabilize Europe. Joseph's younger brother and heir, Charles VI, resorted to extreme measures, filling his own wife's rooms with nude male statues and altering her diet in desperate attempts to produce a son. He failed. The resulting succession crisis, rooted in Joseph's infected bloodline, would later ignite the War of the Austrian Succession, a conflict that drew in every major European power. Joseph died in 1711 at just 32, his political ambitions largely unfulfilled. His legacy was not one of reform or victory, but of a biological time bomb that exploded into war a generation later. In the end, the story of royal syphilis is a story of profound vulnerability. It exposes the fragile human machinery behind the pompous state. These rulers commanded armies and shaped laws, yet were brought low by a microscopic spirochete. Their private sicknesses became public calamities, altering bloodlines, triggering conflicts, and forever changing the course of history. The crown, it seems, offered no protection from the oldest and most intimate of consequences. If this journey into the hidden infirmities of power captured your imagination, please give this video a like. It fuels winds of thought in our mission to uncover the human truths behind the historical curtain.